Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some upcoming due dates. And then we'll get you a line. I'll tell you about the week, what's ahead. So as you look into the assignments, you can see that there's a due date, which isn't actually on a day that we're in class, which is fine. So what I intend to do today is talk about delivering a speech, and then for our next class period, as you're still working on your drafts, you should, I'll talk about introductions, conclusions, and transitions for the next class period. When I've gauged my other classes, they've just needed more time just to work on their outlines, to get everything together. So this is a nice way just to kind of get away from that. And by our next class period, I do want you to be in pretty good shape as far as, I don't want things to be perfect, but I want you to have a good set idea of your main points. You should be shaping up that specific purpose and central idea to match the research that you have been looking at. Then you will submit in a forum the draft, and then we'll work with that. So that's the reason why I give you a little bit of time. I wanted to give you the lecture on introductions, conclusions, and transitions. If you're at that point, you can go ahead and finish that. And if not, it's okay. You can finish that later. But for your drafts, I want, at a minimum, your main points complete with in-text citation, a specific purpose, a central idea, and your reference page. Pretty polished, but if there's mistakes, it's okay. If you don't get to the introduction, conclusion, or transitions, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We still have a lot of time to work through this, and I'd like to give you a couple of practice runs with each other in class before we get these presentations. So, does that make sense? The other thing we'll do on Thursday, we'll determine the order of presentation. So that's another thing for you to keep in mind, so it's a big deal to be here. Because if you're not here, then you go first on the first day that we present. Okay. Let's talk about delivery styles. So in our class, in our books, there are different ways that you can deliver a professional presentation, well, presentations in general. And we're going to talk about those. Before we begin talking about those, I'm going to kind of focus on what we're focusing in on this class with our culture. So delivering a speech, it will be different from culture to culture. And for us, it's going to be better for us to present in a way that's what's called listener-centered. In our books, it's called audience-centered. If you're in the classroom, it's called learner-centered. So for those of you in education, I think I have a couple of you that are in education, that those terms are pretty much interchangeable because education is a type of public speaking. So this is what we're doing in this class. I'm showing you the tools to be able to deliver so that you're successful within this culture. That doesn't mean that a different style, different cultures are wrong or bad, but it's just different. So if you're in a listener-centered type of culture, which is us, this particular classroom is considered listener-centered. What that means is, as an audience member, you walk into the classroom and you basically don't have to do that much. I mean, you have to be willing to listen, but you don't have to do very much as far as preparation is concerned. So the presenter has to be very in tune to the audience and really watch those, for example, body language, ask questions or ask if an audience has questions throughout the presentation. And if the audience doesn't understand something, it is the responsibility of the speaker to make sure that they're clear. So there's a lot of burden on the speaker, and that's what I'm teaching you to do because that's particularly important in this culture. It's probably part of the reason why people need public speaking, because it's hard to do. It's hard to have this audience-centered or listener-centered approach. On the other scale, by the way, when you're looking at cultures, and we get into cultures, you'll see that it isn't just all one way or all the other way. But if I were to explain the extreme of a speaker-centered culture, that would mean that a speaker just has to prepare him or herself. They just walk in and they deliver a presentation. It is up to the audience to have some foresight as far as what's going to happen. Background information about the speaker. They can have more, and this one's a tough one, they can have more than one theme. So there's an opportunity to be very confusing if, as an audience, you aren't prepared for it. So audience members are expected to know their stuff before they come in, and then that speaker's just going to enhance that knowledge in some way. If they don't understand, then they better get up to speed. They better learn very quickly. And we have some aspects of that within our culture. Depending on, let's say, where you work, that can be an opportunity to have a speaker-centered type of presentation. So how many of you have experienced the speaker-centered? You got into a situation and you're like, man, you should have gone up to speak. Okay, you have? No?
Like giving speeches to...
No, you're the audience member, and you thought, man, I should have prepared for this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, wait, what situation?
I don't think I could point one out, but in the back of my mind, it's ringing a bell.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I'll kind of help you out a little bit. So more comfortable situation, and I should have known. So this was years ago. I had a friend that wanted me to go to the Dixie Chicks concert. And I know nothing of their music. And I was busy, and she's, oh, you just come with me, it's gonna be so much fun. And I showed up and knew none of their songs. And it was like so uncomfortable for me. And I thought to myself, I should have listened to a few of their albums before I came to this concert, because has anybody experienced that? You go to a concert and you're like, I should have prepared myself for this. Okay, so that's an example of where we're kind of merging into that different type. Now, of course, concerts are something that we widely do here, but typically when you go to a concert, you know something about the musician. Okay, other areas. Anybody in the military? Oh, that's why. Okay, so people that have served in the military will say that type of culture is definitely speaker-centered. So you walk into a presentation, and if you don't know what's going on, you're in big trouble. So you have to do that prep work in order to go in. About an advanced class. Professor walks in, no review of anything, just starts at something really hard. So you're starting to see where there's pieces of our culture that may have that type of setting. So other examples, like highly traditional situations. So some people that will go to a church service of a very old type of religion. That is one where, as an outsider, when you come in, you may not know anything, and nobody's going to share that with you. The things that you should be doing, you have to figure it out, or you're thinking to yourself, I should have probably, had some insight. So it could be maybe you went for a wedding, or maybe you're just visiting. So those are some examples of where this type of different type of presentation style can come out. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that ours is better. It's just a very different style of communication. Okay, so now that we've talked about how cultures can make a difference, and we'll go a little bit more into cultures as we move through some of the interpersonal pieces of our chapters. The first type of presentation, an impromptu. So who knows how to explain what an impromptu presentation is? So typically, you have a few minutes. You know, I'd be like, oh, tell me about your favorite hobby. And you can think about it for a few minutes, and that's it. That's all the preparation you have. You just go up and talk about it. So there's a lot of advantages to this style of presentation. Okay, one thing is that you're not nervous the entire time because you don't know what's going to happen. But what are some other things that can come out that make this a really nice presentation?
So you're saying that this impromptu is just like you're thinking of it right then and you go and kind of just say what you're thinking right at the moment?
Pure and total winging it.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Could be good.
Yeah, it could be good. You're right. It could be good. So what could you do to make that good? You're up there and
Comedy or like not a lot of pressure, so you're not feeling a lot of pressure and neither is the audience.
so it's known. This is going to be a relaxed type of environment. So if you were put on the spot and I were to ask you, well, tell me about your favorite hobby, what would you be talking about? Just your own thing. So it has an opportunity to be highly authentic and allow you to have that connection with the audience in a way that is spontaneous and nice. Now, it can go really bad, impromptus. What do you think are some of the major dangers of an impromptu presentation?
Just not prepared. Some people like to be prepared and have everything
Okay, so
set in line.
total and complete meltdown
Yeah.
is a possibility, yes. Which all of them can have that if you're not prepared, but especially, that one we know we're not prepared. What else could be a potential negative?
Topics could be brought up that you're unsure about.
So if that's the case, and you're just talking about something, what could happen?
Just random stuff coming out.
Okay, so random stuff that's not really accurate. So those are some of the things. I always tell students at this point that I fear for the people that have somebody from the news chasing them and saying, what are your thoughts about this? And they'll, they're expected to say something. A lot of them will just say no comment. But if they are inclined to say something, the chances are that's going to be fact-checked and it's going to be wrong. So that's a really tough situation to be in. So you can get into a lot of trouble from that type of impromptu. So inaccurate, unorganized, very different from what you're doing right now because you're organizing everything. You know exactly what you're going to talk about. You have no idea what you're going to talk about in an impromptu. So you can be very scattered. But it can be very nice. So there's advantages and disadvantages to this style. Let's move to the next one. That script. Nice manuscript. Has anybody used a teleprompter before? What situation was it?
I was in 5th grade, and we would record the news every day for class.
That's amazing. Oh, did you feel like you got better with the teleprompter?
I had 1 whole week of doing it. I think I got better. I don't really remember it that well. I just have that vague memory of me. I remember accidentally wearing a green jacket, and it was a green screen.
Yep. Yeah, so you're kind of in the, washed out in the back. Nice. Did you use a teleprompter?
No, I would do that every day, wear green.
Wash out, a green hat.
Yeah, as much green
Oh,
as I
yeah.
can.
Well, it'd just be a floating head out there. So, yeah, manuscript style presentations, that's one way to deliver a manuscript style presentation. The other way is to have the note card. So if you have a note card, if you have note cards, for example, like this is really nice. So what can you tell about the immediate advantages of a manuscript style presentation?
Organized.
Yeah, you have an opportunity to organize everything precisely, even more so than what you're going to be doing, because you're not going to be really that dependent on note cards for our class. What could be a disadvantage?
Goes really quickly.
It can.
Is it?
So you can go too fast because everything's right in front of you. And then this is a problem, losing your connection with your audience because you get buried too much in your note cards. In fact, what I do for you, that's exactly when I have you practice for your presentations, one of the things I warn students about is not to hold their note cards with both hands. Otherwise it turns into a manuscript style presentation, even if they don't need the note cards, because it's just so tempting to read everything. So, and then it goes like this. The moment students go like this, they go like this. And then it's this right here. And even later on, students will say, I don't know why I did that. I was reading through this and I knew I should have looked up. I knew I should have put the note cards down. I just couldn't. But manuscript style, they can be really good, but they can be also mechanical. And so it's a style of presentation like newscasters. They're professional. That, using the teleprompter, very helpful. And there can be an illusion that you're connected to your audience because of you're looking at a camera. But it's, and the other thing that's really good is you're never at a loss for words. Other things that can happen though, and I mean, these are real things, so of course the issue of getting too buried into your notes, but I was evaluating some presentations and this poor kid, he got his note cards out of order and he read the same note card twice. And he was so nervous that he didn't realize that he read the same note card twice. So that's a potential. I mean, you can still make mistakes with this, less likely if you have your note cards in order. Okay, so that's a great presentation style, but it does have its faults. This one we love. We love memorized as audience members. So how many of you really enjoy live theater? I'm a big fan of live. I love it. It's so much fun. So, and entertainment is your memorized. Why do we like this? What's our love for this?
Like they're compassionate about what they're doing and it's all memorized and they're telling a story.
Yeah, nothing is there so they can, that passion, they feel so connected to you.
You have to tell a story in like one space that you don't have when you are filming a movie. You have all these different sets.
Mhm.
You have this one stage, and that's it. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, creating that reality in that small area. So you have to be really good at this. So for memorizing something from top to bottom, it's difficult. Anybody have Dr. Nielsen for an English teacher? If you have an opportunity, really interesting person. He's, I think, been voted the best actor in Lincoln. So he's done a lot of Shakespeare. So, and I've been to several of his plays, and he's amazing as far as an actor. He's always, whenever I watch him in a play, I always think he's the strongest actor. But when I watch him for months, he is buried in that script. and he will he'll go and I'll see him in the cafeteria, he's just reading. I'll go outside and he'll be sitting on a break, he's just reading, he's memorizing everything word for word. It's an enormous amount of time, and that's months before the play. So obviously, I mean, and I don't know if you can consider that a disadvantage if you really like that, but that can be considered a disadvantage because of the amount of time it takes. But that connection, and I'm telling you, I enjoy that. That's nice, we love that, for all those reasons we talked about. But what can happen though? What's the biggest flaw? Even if you know it really well. So we're flawed, and that's a big thing that can happen. And hopefully you have people around you that can help you out and get you back on track, but it's, you can get distracted, or maybe an audience member does something or says something that connects to you in a way that just gets you off track. So that's a big one. Last one. This is the best of all worlds and the worst of all worlds. This is what I'm asking you to do by the end of this class, is to deliver an extemporaneous. So we're going to do this piece by piece so that you're going to get more and more extemporaneous. I'm going to warn you, if you look this up on Google, they're going to describe it impromptu, and that's not what it is. Parts of it are. First of all, who can say this word?
Extemporaneous.
Very good. 3 times fast. It's a really nice word to drop at a party, just for fun. Yeah, for my class, I'm delivering extemporaneously. So you can have fun with this. But what is it? What is it? What do we have to do? If it's the best of all worlds, you know there's going to be a little bit of impromptu. Where would that impromptu come in?
Maybe just the flow of the speech, because you kind of already have it prepared in your mind, but when you get up there to deliver it, you can kind of wing it a little bit to an extent.
Okay, so if an audience member asks you a question, impromptu allows you that opportunity to take a step back, to sink it in, to think about it, which means also, this is what's hard, you might want to anticipate the types of questions that will come up. I didn't cover this, and if some people have experience in this area, that may come up, it may not. So you can think about what types of questions would come up, which takes more preparation than what's actually in your outline. So part of it is that manuscript. Those are your note cards right here. So there's going to be a couple of places where you will take the time and maybe read a sentence, get you on track. And it has to go down because part of it's going to be memorized too. So we have a combination of all 3. And, honestly, when you're doing extemporaneous, usually students are a little bit more manuscript when they first start out. I don't know, that's not that, and that's better. By your last presentation, which will be a group presentation, you'll be delivering in an extemporaneous style, and you'll have interaction with the class. So it's gonna be a planned interaction, even though that can be partially impromptu. So that's what we're aiming for. So it is the most audience-centered. That's why it's so great. And the most difficult to prepare. As you know, right now, we've been spending days on this. It takes a lot of time to put together. The advantages, the more you do it, the better you become. So it can be highly intimidating, but it is the best. So let's go back. Okay, who can tell me what impromptu is? Okay. So what are the advantages of impromptu?
Relaxed, carefree, friendly, more personal.
Little prep.
Yep, so if you're nervous, it's gonna be at that moment. What are the disadvantages?
Inaccurate information.
Yep. There's the potential. Anything else?
Scattered, organized.
Right. Yep, unorganized. Okay. Manuscript, you know what it is, it's a script. Advantages.
You can keep track of where you are.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else?
You prepare all of information that you want to talk about.
Really nice advantage. What are the disadvantages?
You keep reading.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you forget.
Yep. Yep, and that reading is disconnection.
You don't have the eye contact with the audience, so.
And you can still make mistakes. So you can mess up your note cards and, yeah, you can still make mistakes, but less likely. Okay, memorize, top to bottom. Why do we love it?
You can add nonverbal cues, more body language, make it a little more interesting and personal.
Very nice. And we love it just for entertainment. Okay, what's the major problem with this?
Forgetting.
All right, so you might see something like this on the test. Does anybody remember the questions we talked about